You become powerful when you stop reacting by Earl Nightingale. Lesson 1. The gap between stimulus and response. There exists a tiny space between what happens to us and how we choose to respond. This space, this gap, may seem infinitesimal, but within it lies all our freedom, all our power, and all our potential for growth. I've spent decades studying the most successful men and women, and I can tell you with certainty that their greatness wasn't born from their circumstances, but from what they did within this critical gap. Most people live their entire lives reacting automatically to whatever comes their way. Someone criticizes them, they become defensive. Traffic slows them down, they grow frustrated. A challenge appears and fear takes over. They are like leaves blown about by every wind, never choosing their direction. But this is not how champions are made. Consider this truth. We become what we think about. The thoughts we hold in our minds materialize in our lives with remarkable precision. When we react instantly to every stimulus that comes our way, we forfeit our power to choose our thoughts. We allow outside circumstances to plant seeds in our mental garden without our permission. I recall a brilliant business executive who lost a $1 million contract because he couldn't resist firing back an angry email after feeling slighted by a client. 5 minutes of reaction cost him years of work. A dear friend ruined a 20-year marriage with words spoken in 10 seconds of anger. Words he couldn't take back. These weren't bad people. They were good people. They were good people caught in reactive moments. Science reveals what happens in our brains during these moments. When threatened or provoked, our ancient limbic system floods our bodies with chemicals designed for survival, not wisdom. Our thinking brain, the prefrontal cortex, gets temporarily overridden. We become less intelligent, less creative, and less ourselves in these reactive states. But we aren't powerless against this biological programming. By practicing awareness of this gap, we can stretch it from microseconds into meaningful moments of choice. Begin with your breath. When you feel the impulse to react, take one deep breath. Count to 5 silently. Feel your feet on the ground. These simple acts create space, precious space where wisdom can enter. Try carrying a small notebook for 1 week. Each time you find yourself reacting automatically, make a quick note. What triggered you? How did you feel? What did you feel? What would a thoughtful response have looked like? This simple exercise brings awareness to patterns we rarely notice. Another practice. When speaking with others, especially in disagreement, pause for 3 seconds before responding. This tiny gap seems insignificant, but it changes conversations dramatically. You'll notice more, hear more clearly, and respond with greater intelligence. The most powerful people you've ever known or read about mastered this space between stimulus and response. They weren't born with this ability. They developed it through practice and awareness. They understood that freedom from reaction isn't just a philosophical idea. It's the foundation of a life of power and purpose. The quality of your life ultimately depends not on what happens to you, but on how you respond to what happens, and your power to choose that response. To stop reacting and start responding may be the most valuable asset you possess. Let us begin our journey by honoring this small but mighty gap, for within it lies all the difference between an ordinary life and an extraordinary one. Lesson 2. The 6-inch battlefield between your ears. Friends, the greatest battles you'll ever fight won't take place on some distant shore or in a boardroom downtown. The most decisive conflicts of your life are waged in that magnificent 6-inch battlefield between your ears. Your mind, this remarkable instrument that sets you apart from all other creatures, is where your true power lives. I've spent decades studying successful men and women, and I can tell you with certainty, they've mastered this battlefield. They understand a fundamental truth that eludes most people. You see, what occupies your thoughts becomes the architect of your life. This isn't mystical philosophy, it's practical reality. Every thought that passes through your mind acts as a filter for your attention. And here's the astonishing thing. Your attention is the spotlight that illuminates what becomes real in your life. What you focus on expands. What you ignore withers away. Consider this. At this very moment, thousands of sensory inputs are bombarding your mind. The pressure of the chair against your back, the distant sounds outside your window, the temperature of the air on your skin. Yet you notice only what your attention selects. This same principle applies to opportunities, solutions, and possibilities in your life. What psychologists call the law of dominant thought operates whether you're aware of it or not. Your predominant thoughts, those ideas you return to repeatedly, shape your actions, which in turn create your circumstances. The person consumed with thoughts of lack will find evidence of scarcity everywhere. The individual who cultivates thoughts of abundance discovers opportunities at every turn. But here's the problem most people face. They believe they're at the mercy of every thought that enters their mind. Nothing could be further from the truth. While you may not control which thoughts arrive at your doorstep, you absolutely decide which ones you invite in for dinner. The average person experiences thousands of thoughts daily. Trying to control them all would be like trying to direct each drop in a waterfall. The secret is learning to guide the river, not manage every droplet. You become powerful when you recognize which thoughts deserve your attention and which should be allowed to float away unnoticed. Try this simple exercise tomorrow morning. For just 5 minutes, observe your thoughts without judgment. Watch them appear and disappear like clouds across the sky. You'll quickly notice how many are repetitive, unhelpful, or simply distractions. This awareness alone will begin strengthening your mental muscles. Then, practice the art of thought selection. When a negative thought appears, don't fight it. Simply redirect your attention to a more productive alternative. It's like changing the channel on a television rather than arguing with the program you dislike. Remember, friends, this 6-inch battlefield determines every aspect of your life, your happiness, your achievements, your relationships. Master this space, and you master your destiny. The person who learns to direct their thoughts, rather than being directed by them, holds the key to extraordinary living. Your mind will always be the first place where victory or defeat occurs. Guard it, train it, and nurture it with the same dedication a gardener shows to precious soil. For just as surely as seeds become plants, your dominant thoughts become your life. Lesson 3. Planting seeds in the garden of your mind. My good friend, imagine for a moment that your mind is a garden. Not just any garden, but the most important plot of land you'll ever tend. In this garden grows everything that will eventually manifest in your life. The thoughts you plant today become the reality you live tomorrow. Every single thought that enters your consciousness is a seed. Some thoughts are like beautiful roses that will bring color and fragrance to your life. Others are like weeds, invasive, choking out the good plants and spreading faster than you can pull them. The choice of which seeds to plant is entirely yours. You see, thoughts are not merely wispy, abstract things. They are creative forces with the power to shape your destiny. The principle of mental causation is really quite simple. Your outer world will always be a reflection of your inner world. What you dwell upon in the quiet chambers of your mind determines what shows up in your experience. Let me share a secret that the most successful men and women understand. They carefully guard the entrance to their mental garden. They stand watch at the gate, deciding what thoughts deserve the fertile soil of their attention. When negative thoughts approach, fear, doubt, worry, they recognize these as weeds and refuse them entry. You must become equally vigilant. When you hear that negative news report, ask yourself, does this deserve a place in my garden? When a coworker shares office gossip, consider, will this thought bear fruit that nourishes my goals? Each day you make thousands of these decisions, often without realizing it. Now, to begin cultivating your ideal mental garden, start with this practical technique. Set aside 10 minutes each morning to deliberately plant positive, productive thoughts. Visualize your goals as already accomplished. Feel the satisfaction of achievement. See yourself responding calmly rather than reacting hastily. These mental rehearsals are like watering your chosen seeds. Next, begin the work of uprooting mental weeds. When you catch yourself thinking, I can't possibly succeed, pull that weed immediately. replace it with, "I have everything I need to achieve my goals." When you find yourself dwelling on past mistakes, yank that thought out by its roots and plant, instead, "My past has prepared me for greater success now." I challenge you to undertake a 30-day mental diet. For 1 month, consciously monitor and select the thoughts you allow to take root. Just as a physical diet requires discipline and awareness, this mental regimen demands constant vigilance. But the rewards are measurable. Create a personal inventory of empowering thoughts. Write down statements that energize and inspire you. Keep them close at hand, in your wallet, on your desk, by your bedside. When mental weeds appear, reach for these powerful replacements. Remember, friend, the garden of your mind is always growing something. The question is, are you growing what you want? By choosing thoughts of possibility, growth, and calm response rather than hasty reaction, you are literally shaping your future. The harvest you reap tomorrow depends entirely on the mental seeds you plant today. Lesson 4. The Quiet Voice of Wisdom. The most powerful people in the world have mastered a simple skill that eludes most of humanity. They have learned to listen to the quiet voice of wisdom that speaks within them. This voice is not the reactive mind that jumps at every stimulus like a startled cat. No, this is the voice of intuition, your higher self, the accumulated wisdom that comes when you allow silence to enter your busy world. Picture the ocean for a moment. On the surface, waves crash and foam, tossed about by every passing wind. But dive beneath those turbulent waters and you'll find stillness, clarity, and calm. Your mind works the same way. The surface thoughts, your reactions, are often just noise, while the deeper wisdom waits patiently below. I've observed throughout my years that most people never hear this quiet voice because they've surrounded themselves with constant noise. The television blares, the phone buzzes, and the mind never gets a moment's rest. Is it any wonder that wisdom cannot be heard in such conditions? The truly powerful individual creates deliberate islands of silence in their day. They understand that reaction comes from the surface mind, but intuition emerges from the depths, and this intuition is your hidden superpower. Consider how differently you might approach a problem after sitting quietly with it for 5 minutes versus responding immediately. I've found that those 5 minutes can save 5 months of fixing mistakes made in haste. Many confuse reaction with intuition, but they are vastly different energies. Reaction feels urgent, pressured, and often emotionally charged. Intuition, by contrast, arrives with a gentle certainty, a knowing that doesn't need to shout to be right. It simply is. The art of strategic silence is perhaps the least appreciated business skill in America today. When others are talking, arguing, and reacting, the person who listens attentively gains the upper hand. When others rush to judgment, the person who pauses gathers precious data others miss entirely. You need not become a monk on a mountaintop to practice this wisdom. Begin with just 3 minutes of silence each morning before the day's demands begin. Sit comfortably, breathe deeply, and simply notice your thoughts without chasing after them. This small practice alone will begin to separate your wise mind from your reactive mind. Throughout your day, practice strategic pauses before responding. When someone asks you a question, try waiting 3 seconds before answering. This tiny gap allows your deeper wisdom to surface and your reactive impulses to settle. Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. The oak tree doesn't strain to grow. It simply follows its inner blueprint with perfect timing. Your mind functions best in the same way. The quiet voice of wisdom speaks most clearly in moments of stillness. It cannot compete with the shouting match of reactions. Create that stillness, and you create the conditions for wisdom to emerge naturally. This is how ordinary people become extraordinary decision makers, not through frantic activity, but through the strength of strategic stillness. Lesson 5. Breaking free from the reaction habit. Have you ever noticed how quickly you respond when someone cuts you off in traffic, or when a colleague says something that pushes your buttons? These moments reveal our reaction triggers, those situations that bypass our thinking mind and activate an immediate, often unproductive response. Friends, the path to personal power begins when we identify these triggers. Each of us carries a unique set of circumstances that prompt automatic reactions. For some, it's criticism. For others, it's being interrupted or feeling disrespected. These triggers developed over years, often rooted in childhood experiences or past wounds. The price we pay for these knee-jerk responses is enormous. A moment of angry reaction can damage relationships that took years to build. A defensive response can close doors of opportunity. A fearful reaction can prevent us from taking the very action that would lead to growth. The cost compounds over time, creating patterns that define our lives in ways we never intended. But here's the wonderful truth. You can establish new patterns of thoughtful response. This isn't about suppression or denial of feelings. Rather, it's about creating space between the stimulus and your response, that magical gap where your power resides. Begin with this simple practice. When you feel that familiar surge of reaction building, take one deliberate breath. Just one. In that breath lies the seed of your freedom. Then ask yourself, what's really happening here? This question creates distance between you and the triggering event. When dealing with difficult people, remember that their behavior rarely has anything to do with you. It reflects their inner state, their struggles, their limitations. By recognizing this truth, you can respond to the person rather than react to their behavior. Try this approach. I notice you seem frustrated. How can we address this constructively? The remarkable 5-second rule can interrupt reaction patterns before they take control. When you feel a reaction forming, silently count backward. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This simple counting pattern interrupts the emotional hijacking of your brain, redirecting your mental energy toward your prefrontal cortex, the home of wise decisions. Remember always that reactions are learned behaviors, and what is learned can be unlearned. Each time you pause before reacting, you weaken old neural pathways and create new ones. With practice, thoughtful response becomes your natural state. The most powerful people are not those who react dramatically to every situation. They are those who possess the ability to remain centered and choose their responses with intention. They understand that true power lies not in showing everyone how they feel, but in directing their energy toward what truly matters. Your freedom awaits in that small space between what happens to you and how you choose to respond. Cultivate that space diligently, and you'll discover a power within you greater than any external circumstance you'll ever face. Lesson 6. You are not your circumstances. The man stood there, battered by rain and wind, staring at the ruined fields where his crops once grew. 1 minute, he had been a successful farmer. The next, nature had decided otherwise. In that critical moment, he faced a decision that would define not just his year, but his entire life. Would he become his circumstances, or would he remember the profound truth that has liberated men and women throughout history? You are not your circumstances. Friends, this distinction is one of the most liberating realizations a human being can have. Your circumstances are simply the stage upon which you perform, but they are not the performance itself. We live in a world that constantly tries to convince us otherwise. The world says, you are your bank account, you are your job title, you are your successes and failures. But I say to you with absolute certainty, these things are no more you things you wear or the car you drive than the clothes you wear or the car you drive. Consider for a moment, if you lost everything tomorrow, your possessions, your status, even your health, would you cease to exist? Of course not. Something fundamental would remain, that essence which makes you uniquely you. That essence is what gives you power beyond circumstances. This understanding was precisely what allowed Viktor Frankl to discover meaning in the most horrific circumstances of Nazi concentration camps. This is what enabled Helen Keller to transcend her limitations of blindness and deafness to become one of history's most inspiring figures. This is what allowed Lincoln to rise from a log cabin to the White House. In my years of studying successful people, I've observed a common trait. They refuse to be defined by temporary conditions. They understand what Earl Nightingale called becoming the cause, not the effect. When circumstances push against them, They push back with greater force, not through reaction, but through creation. The reactive mind says, "This happened to me, so I can't succeed." The creative mind says, "This happened. Now what will I do about it?" Try this simple exercise. When facing a difficult situation, pause and say to yourself, "This is happening around me, but it is not happening to me unless I allow it to define me." Feel the subtle shift in your thinking. Notice how this creates space between you and the problem. Your circumstances are like weather patterns. Sometimes sunny, sometimes stormy, but always changing. The question is, will you be like the weather vane that spins with every changing wind, or will you be like the mountain, unmoved by the storms that pass over it? The truth is, we don't control most of what happens to us. The economy shifts, relationships change, health challenges arise. But we absolutely control how we interpret and respond to these events. This response ability is our greatest power. When you no longer react to circumstances as though they define you, you access a wellspring of creativity and resilience that most people never tap into. You move from the passenger seat to the driver's seat of your life. Remember, circumstances come and go, but who you choose to be remains. You become powerful when you stop letting external conditions determine your internal state. You are not your circumstances. You are not your circumstances. You are the power that transforms them. Lesson 7. The compound effect of non-reaction. My good friend, there exists a remarkable principle in the universe that often goes unnoticed by the casual observer. This principle, the compound effect, works silently and steadily in every area of our lives, including our capacity to respond rather than react. Think for a moment about a savings account. A single dollar deposited seems insignificant, but that dollar left to compound with regular additions over time eventually grows into a sum that would astound most people. The growth appears slow at first, almost invisible, until one day you look at your account and find yourself amazed at what has accumulated. This same principle applies perfectly to your practice of non-reaction. Each time you pause before responding to a difficult situation, you make a deposit into your account of personal power. The first few times may feel uncomfortable, even forced. The benefits might seem small or non-existent, but I promise you these deposits are accumulating. When you choose not to snap back at criticism, when you listen fully before forming your response, when you allow a moment of reflection before making a decision, these are all deposits. Like compound interest, these moments of self-control build upon one another, creating a powerful force of character that others cannot help but notice and respect. I've observed that people who consistently respond rather than react develop a reputation that precedes them. They become known as the steady, thoughtful individual whose opinion carries weight precisely because it isn't given impulsively. Their words have power because they are chosen deliberately, not tossed about carelessly. A practical approach to harnessing this compound effect is keeping what I call a reaction journal. Each evening, record instances where you successfully paused before responding and note the outcome. Also, document moments where you reacted impulsively and the results that followed. This simple practice creates awareness that accelerates your growth. Remember, we don't need to achieve perfection in one dramatic leap. The one improvement system is far more effective and sustainable. Can you be just one better at controlling your reactions today than you were yesterday? This seemingly tiny increment, compounded over weeks and months, produces remarkable transformation. I've seen this play out countless times. A business executive who once frightened her team with unpredictable outbursts transformed, through consistent practice of non-reaction, into a leader people would follow anywhere. A father who regularly exploded at small irritations gradually became the calm center of his family, simply by committing to that pause between stimulus and response. The nature of compound growth is that it starts slowly, almost imperceptibly. This is precisely why so many abandon good practices before seeing results. But the patient individual who continues making daily deposits into their account of self-control eventually reaches a tipping point where the benefits become obvious to all. Your commitment to non-reaction, practiced consistently, will compound into one of your greatest sources of personal power. Each small victory creates momentum for the next, and before long, you'll find yourself in possession of an influence, an inner strength that cannot be taken from you because it was built one wise response at a time. Lesson 8. Selective attention, your superpower. Have you ever considered the extraordinary power that resides within your ability to choose what deserves your attention? In this world of endless distractions, your attention has become the most precious currency you possess. What you give your attention to grows. What you ignore withers away. I've often observed that the most successful people throughout history share one remarkable trait. They develop an almost instinctive ability to focus their attention on what truly matters while filtering out the noise. This selective attention isn't merely a skill. It's a superpower that anyone can develop with practice and awareness. Consider your attention as a spotlight in a darkened theater. You can direct it wherever you wish, illuminating one area while leaving the rest in darkness. The audience sees only what falls within that circle of light. Similarly, your mind processes most deeply whatever falls within your circle of attention. Let me share a profound truth. You don't need more information, more opportunities, or more options. What you need is better filtering. The principle of diminishing inputs for greater outputs runs counter to conventional wisdom, yet it holds the key to exceptional achievement. By deliberately reducing what you allow into your mental space, you amplify what truly deserves to be there. In practical terms, this means creating what I call an attention budget, a deliberate allocation of your focus toward activities, people, and thoughts that advance your chosen purpose. Just as you would budget your finances, you must budget your attention with equal care. This doesn't happen by accident. It requires conscious choice. The attention merchants of our modern world, social media, news outlets, entertainment platforms, and even well-meaning friends, all compete fiercely for your mental focus. They understand what many people do not. Attention drives behavior, and behavior drives results. By capturing your attention, they influence your life's direction. Breaking free requires a mindful approach to information consumption. Begin by asking one simple question before engaging with any input. Does this information serve my highest purpose? If the answer is no, you have discovered something that belongs on your not-to-do list. This not-to-do list might be the most powerful document you'll ever create. While others frantically add more activities and commitments to their lives, you'll gain extraordinary power by subtraction, deliberately choosing what doesn't deserve your precious attention. Reaction almost always stems from something capturing your attention against your best interests. The stimulus appears, grabs your focus, and triggers an automatic response. By mastering selective attention, you short-circuit this process at its source. The person who controls what they pay attention to controls their life. Your mind will work tirelessly on whatever you place before it. This truth contains both warning and promise. Feed it problems, and it produces worry. Feed it possibilities, and it creates solutions. Today, begin noticing what captures your attention automatically. These unconscious attention patterns reveal much about your current life trajectory. Then, with gentle persistence, redirect your focus toward what truly matters. This simple practice, repeated daily, transforms not just your mind, but your entire existence. Lesson 9. The strange mathematics of achievement. Most people have the formula for success completely backwards. They constantly add more and more to their lives. More activities, more information, more reactions. But true achievement operates on different mathematical principles entirely. Let me share with you a powerful equation that has transformed the lives of thousands. Results, the thoughts, actions, reactions. Notice that final element, subtraction, not addition. The most successful people in the world understand that power comes not from doing more, but from doing less of what doesn't matter. Think about the last time you achieved something meaningful. Was it the result of frantically responding to every stimulus that came your way? Or was it because you focused intently on what mattered while deliberately ignoring distractions? The average person spends their day in a reactive state, bouncing from one external demand to another like a pinball. They say yes to requests that don't align with their goals. They react emotionally to minor provocations. They interrupt important work to check messages. Each reaction subtracts from their power to create the life they want. Success requires a different approach. Rather than adding more to your plate, begin subtracting the unnecessary reactions that drain your energy and attention. This strange mathematics of achievement means you'll accomplish more by doing less. I once knew a businessman who turned his failing company around not by working harder or longer, but by eliminating 80 of his product line to focus on the 20s that actually generated profits. Within 6 months, his revenues had doubled while his costs were cut in half. He understood the power of meaningful constraints. The same principle applies to your personal reactions. By placing constraints on what you'll respond to, you free up tremendous mental and emotional resources. Remember, every reaction has a cost. When you say yes to responding to something unimportant, you're saying no to something that truly matters. Start today by identifying 3 common situations that trigger unproductive reactions in your life. Perhaps it's a certain type of email, a particular person's comments, or the urge to check social media when feeling bored. Now, create a simple plan to eliminate these reactions for 1 week. The mathematics of success says that by subtracting these reactions, you'll add power to your life. Many people believe that success comes from finding the right additions to their lives, the right morning routine, the right productivity system, the right connections. But the truth is simpler and more profound. Success comes from subtracting the wrong reactions. Imagine your mind as a garden. You could spend all day planting more and more seeds, or you could focus on removing the weeds that choke out what you've already planted. The strange mathematics of achievement suggests that pulling weeds, eliminating unnecessary reactions, will yield a far more abundant harvest. As you move forward, remember that your greatest power lies not in what you add to your life, but in what you choose to subtract from it. By mastering the mathematics of non-reaction, you place yourself firmly on the path to extraordinary achievement. Lesson 10. Building your response toolbox. Throughout our journey together, we've examined the remarkable power that comes from choosing response over reaction. Now it's time to equip ourselves with practical tools to make this power a daily reality in our lives. The successful man or woman is much like a skilled craftsperson. Just as a carpenter wouldn't attempt to build a fine piece of furniture with only a hammer, we cannot navigate life's challenges with a single response. We need a complete toolbox of thoughtful responses ready at hand when life tests us. My friends, the first essential tool is what I call the pause button. This simple yet profound tool creates that vital space between stimulus and response where your power truly lives. When faced with a challenging situation, mentally press this button by taking a deep breath. This single breath can be the difference between a reaction you'll regret and a response you'll be proud of. The second tool in your response toolbox is the future self technique. Before responding to any significant situation, ask yourself, how would my best self handle this? By projecting forward and imagining your wisest self already navigating this challenge successfully, you gain immediate perspective and clarity. I've found throughout my years that having prepared responses for predictable situations eliminates unnecessary stress. Create simple scripts for common challenges. If you know certain topics trigger emotional reactions, draft and rehearse balanced responses ahead of time. This isn't being calculating, it's being prepared. Next, add the powerful question trio to your toolbox. Is this true? Is this helpful? Is this helpful? Is this necessary? Before offering any response, especially in heated moments, filter your words through these 3 questions. You'll find that most reactive comments fail at least one of these tests.
Another invaluable tool is what I call planned detachment. This is the ability to mentally step back from a situation and observe it as if watching it happen to someone else. This perspective shift allows you to respond based on principles rather than emotions.
All great achievements in human history came from those who mastered response over reaction. Thomas Edison faced thousands of unsuccessful attempts before creating the light bulb. His response toolbox included boundless curiosity and persistence, rather than frustration or defeat. Your response toolbox should also include the technique of anticipatory planning. Rather than constantly putting out fires, anticipate challenging situations before they arise. Ask yourself what obstacles might appear on the path to your goals, and plan thoughtful responses in advance. The final tool I'll share with you today is perhaps the most important, the practice of purposeful listening. Most reactive behavior stems from listening to respond, rather than listening to understand. When you fully absorb what others are saying without simultaneously crafting your rebuttal, you'll respond from wisdom rather than impulse. Like any set of tools, these responses must be practiced regularly to become second nature. Each day presents new opportunities to reach for a thoughtful response rather than a hasty reaction. As you build and refine your response toolbox, you'll find yourself becoming precisely what you've always been capable of, a person of power, purpose, and peaceful influence. Lesson 11. The unspoken language of non-reaction. There is a language more powerful than words, more compelling than arguments, and more persuasive than the most eloquent speech. It is the language of non-reaction, the quiet strength that speaks volumes without saying a word. I've observed throughout my years that the most influential people in any room are rarely those who speak the most. Rather, they are people who have mastered the art of purposeful silence and measured response. They understand that power doesn't come from controlling others, but from controlling oneself. Consider this truth, my friend. When you choose not to react to provocation, you communicate something remarkable about your character. You tell the world, I am governed by my values, not by your attempts to disturb my peace. This silent message resonates far more deeply than any heated comeback ever could. The unspoken language of non-reaction works like this. When someone expects you to become angry but you remain composed, you create a moment of genuine surprise. This unexpected response short-circuits the typical pattern of human interaction. The person who sought to provoke you now faces a mirror reflecting their own behavior, while you maintain your dignity intact. I recall a business associate who transformed a failing company not through dramatic speeches or aggressive tactics, but through his remarkable ability to stay calm when everyone expected explosion. His employees began to mirror this behavior. Soon, the entire organization operated with a steadiness that competitors couldn't match. His non-reaction became the company culture. This language is particularly powerful in disagreements. When voices rise and emotions flare, the person who refuses to be pulled into the emotional whirlwind becomes the true authority. They create an island of calm that others eventually seek to reach. The mastery of non-reaction also communicates self-confidence. It says, I am secure enough in my position that I need not defend it frantically. This quiet assurance draws others toward your viewpoint far more effectively than desperate persuasion.
Remember, children learn more from what we do than what we say. When you demonstrate self-control through non-reaction, you teach the next generation one of life's most valuable skills without speaking a word about it.
What's fascinating about this language is that it's universally understood. Across cultures, across generations, the person who maintains composure when others lose theirs is recognized as someone exceptional. This is not weakness. It is strength in its purest form. To become fluent in this language, practice allowing small provocations to pass without comment. Notice the space this creates in your relationships. Observe how others begin to interact with you differently when they realize their attempts to disturb your peace will not succeed.
The unspoken language of non-reaction ultimately communicates the most important message of all. I choose my responses rather than having them chosen for me. In that choice lies true freedom, and the kind of quiet power that changes not just conversations, but lives.
Lesson 12. The power of your transformed life. This is where it all comes together, my friend. Throughout our journey, we've discovered the profound truth that true power doesn't come from controlling the world around us. It comes from mastering our responses to it. I've spent decades observing the small minority of men and women who achieve remarkable success in life. The pattern is unmistakable. These people have cultivated a rare ability to remain calm in chaos, thoughtful amidst provocation, and deliberate when others are reactive. They stand like lighthouses on the shore while others are tossed about by every emotional wave. When you stop reacting, you start truly living. Your transformed life becomes a message more powerful than any words could convey. People notice something different about you, a certain steadiness, a depth of character, a presence that commands respect without demanding it. Consider the oak tree. When storms come, it doesn't frantically wave its branches or uproot itself in panic. It simply stands firm, having grown deep roots over time through countless smaller storms. This is your model. Each time you choose response over reaction, you grow stronger roots.
Your newfound power will manifest in unexpected ways. You'll find yourself invited into opportunities that once seemed closed. People will seek your counsel during difficult times. You'll make decisions from a place of clarity rather than confusion. Most importantly, you'll recognize yourself becoming the person you were always meant to be.
This transformation doesn't happen overnight. Inch by inch, anything's a cinch, but yard by yard, it's always hard. Small, consistent choices to pause before responding, to question your initial reactions, and to choose your focus deliberately. These create the foundation of your powerful new life. The world desperately needs more people who refuse to be baited into needless conflict, who don't amplify drama, who maintain perspective during challenging times. By developing this rare quality, you become a force for good wherever you go. Think about the ripple effects of your transformed approach. Your children learn by watching how you respond to frustration. Your colleagues notice how you handle pressure. Your friends observe how you process disappointment. Without saying a word, you're teaching everyone around you a better way to live. The magnificent human mind can be our greatest ally or our worst enemy. When we allow it to react automatically based on old programming and fears, we surrender our power. But when we claim the space between stimulus and response, that sacred pause where wisdom lives, we reclaim our birthright as conscious creators of our experience. You now possess the most valuable knowledge there is, that your power lies not in controlling circumstances, but in choosing your response to them. This single insight, fully embraced and consistently applied, will transform every aspect of your life. So go forward with confidence. When others react, you'll respond. When they speak in haste, you'll listen fully. When they focus on problems, you'll see opportunities. This is the essence of personal power, not dominance over others, but mastery of yourself. Congratulations, my friend. You've discovered what the wise have always known. You become truly powerful when you stop reacting.